Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everybody. I'm Preacher Miles, host of the SOS, the Shout Out Show. Hope you're having a wonderful Thursday, a fabulous Thursday, a fantastic Thursday. Again, we want to give a shout out to our brothers and sisters down in Haiti who are subjects or victims of a large explosion, over 60 people killed. Hearts go out. As well as around the country, anybody who's experienced any kind of distress or heartache or hardship, let us know. And I believe really that prayer works. So I don't want you to feel like you're out there alone. We've all been through some difficult times, some trying times, some challenging issues. But in the end, if we work together, I believe, and we have that conversation, the communication that lets everyone know you're not alone, sometimes it's a little bit easier. So today, brothers and sisters, here on the Shout Out Show, we get to back up a little bit. We've talked a lot about economics. We talk about job mobility. We talked about a lot of things. And one of the things that it keeps coming around is one, economy, but economy attached to jobs. Not just economy, but the whole scope of human capital. What does human capital mean to the employer? It means everything. That term, though, human capital, is so disconnected. It's so dry and pragmatic, though. A lot of people, through the pandemic, stopped seeing themselves as human capital. They started seeing themselves as individuals that were connected to networks and societies and organizations outside of the workplace, brothers and sisters. If you look behind me, some of the guys you see right here, I pulled this background up, and this is from the Great Depression. Now, let me tell you what it is. The Great Depression wanted. These were victims of the stock market crash in 1929. And what is interesting is somebody did a study and they said that people who were affected by the stock market crash in 1929, guess what? They didn't trust the stock market. So you created an entire class, not underclass, but entire class that were distrustful of the U.S. monetary system as opposed to a stock market. Well, we kind of went through that, brothers and sisters. The whole idea of recessions and inflations are usually coupled by the fact that the job market is somehow impaired, it's somehow stagnant, and that people who want to work are not able to work. So we're going to talk about that today because we have a new situation, if you will. We have a plethora of jobs, but people don't want those jobs. Something happened during the pandemic. Now let me explain to you what a job meant for me back in the day. A job for me, I'm an entrepreneur. We used to say job means just over broke. That's what a job meant to me, just over broke. But what I did was the fact that someone said work. You can work for yourself. You can't job for yourself. You can work for yourself. And the whole scope of being able to work for myself is something that I have to say it totally consumed me as a young child. I looked at my uncles, I looked at my auntie, I looked at people in my community who they had jobs, but they gave themselves work. I don't know if that makes sense to some folks, but it was the idea that if I'm going to work, I'm going to work for myself. I'm not going to job for myself. I'm going to work for myself. The pandemic was interesting in a couple of really interesting facets. Number one, that time that you were not at work, the time that people were not at work, the time that people were not at their cubicles, the time that people were not at their jobs, by the water fountain, getting coffee, ordering out, industry stopped, brothers and sisters. And in that stoppage, if you will, what you had was a recalibration. And the recalibration, brothers and sisters, is the thing that we want to talk about today. Much the same as the people in 1929 who lost jobs due to the stock market. The stock market crashed, if you will. The economy was totally in disarray. When they came back to the job market, they came back with a specific, differentiated understanding of work. Now, I can tell you right now, my grandfather used to tell me, your ability to work and provide for your family, that was an essential part of your character as a man. Can you take care of your family? It's huge. I still live by that now. Can you take care of your family? If somebody's sick, you got a wife, you got a daughter, your parents, the value And the merit of you as a man is tied into, can you take care of your family? We just came out of a situation with the pandemic, and we're just getting back to work. We're just getting back to work. But some folks are not getting back to work. They're getting back to the reality of themselves. And we're going to talk about that here in the Shout Out Show. Thank you so much in advance for joining us. We appreciate you. Let's go ahead and get the show started. All right, and we're back. So listen, I want to shout out a couple folks. I forgot to send the link out. So Miss Eleanor, my mom, my Maxine, you just got your links. Please don't be mad with me. You know how it is. I get a little busy. We want to go ahead and shout out whoever we have in the comment section. I'm going to go ahead and shout out our regulars that come through. I know we got Sister Ree in the house. Let's give a shout out to Sister Ree. You know, for those that don't know, Sister Ree started her own business during the pandemic, whereby she took this whole idea of I make food, and she would give me a lot of food, but she took the whole idea that I make food and she commoditized. She segmented it whereby I can take quality control or portion control and I could sell it. And I have to say myself, I speak for a lot of people on the Shout Out Show, we were generally excited that Sister E was going out and taking initiative, if you will. It was easy for her to sit back and not do anything. She could have said my health and da-da-da. But this is the thing that I'm going to talk about today, how people responded in the pandemic. So, Reed, thank you so much for coming. I got to give a shout out to our regulars. I know JT is somewhere out in the atmosphere. He's coming. He'll get on the show, inshallah. I want to give a shout out, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, to my main man, Altaf Rashid. We also want to give a shout out to our brother Bilal Salahuddin, my main man, Eric Carter. We got so many people, Sister Ika. We want to go round the line. We got Sister Janice Tuff. Of course, we have Sister Chowdhury. You know who I'm talking about, Sister Chowdhury. I don't know if she's in Facebook jail again, but if she is, and you can hear our voice through the Facebook jail bars, we miss you. Okay. What's going on, Altaf? I already gave you a shout out, man. I'm going to give you your salams, though. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I appreciate you, brother. I call you our Canadian ambassador. What I want to call you, man, is just mad consistent. You know, a lot of people don't understand the practice. We talk about deliberate practice. Satana and I talk about deliberate practice all the time. You know, just the fact that we've been able to produce this amount of shows in this amount of time, and there really was no disconnect. You know, there was no disconnect. There was no disharmony. Shout out to Satana for being a great consultant producer. You know, she speaks. I hear. We talk about things. We have meetings, and these are the things I would like to say about this particular venture of the Shout Out Show that made it not be a job. It was kind of work. We got into a space where we had an excellent workspace, an excellent work relationship. Okay. So this story begins, brothers and sisters, not with COVID. The whole idea of a job crisis, America ain't working, really comes from a time where America was not working, where the relationship of inflation and recession was usually accompanied by a very, very tight job market, an extremely tight job market. And what everybody should know is probably what you already know. I might just be redundant here, but it's interesting that people have never ever looked at the psychology of people and how they work, their relationships to employment, because most of the studies are very pragmatic and it's done from a productivity level, whereby the businesses and the people who do the assessments and analysis for businesses, they don't take into account, I like to say, the component of human emotion. Now, when I say human emotion, I'm talking about the things that really affect us. You know, a lot of times when we go to work, what do they tell you? Leave your problems at the door, do your job, and leave. That's normally what you hear. You know, leave your issues at the door. Da da. You're here for a job. I pay you for a job. There are a lot of things that are out there floating around about why people are not coming to work. Because see, right now the economy and the economists and the businesses are trying to figure out why people are not coming to work. There are a lot of reasons, and we're going to run through some of them. But before I do that, I want to make sure I prime the pump, and I just want to show you guys. I want to show you an interview that was going on CNN. It just came out today, very, very insightful. And I'm going to try and build off to that if you don't mind. Satana, can we bring that up, please? Thank you.
A simple task. Kate Santangelo picks up her 7-year-old daughter Grace from school, something she's waited years to do.
Do you recall how often you were able to pick your daughter up from school?
Oh my gosh, never.
But that all changed in April. She quit her 15-year career in sales to be home full-time with her kids.
I was working endless hours and traveling a lot.
If COVID didn't happen, do you think that you still would have quit your job?
No, I think I'd still be there. Yeah, without a doubt.
She's one of millions quitting the workforce in recent months. A record 4.4 million quits in September. It's being called the Great Resignation.
We had so much time that, we had to be sitting in our homes and spending time with people that we live with and just shifting priorities.
And she's one of 4.7 million business applications filed from January through October of this year, a 34% increase from the same time period in 2019. She founded Monmouth Moms, a resource guide for parents.
It allows me to take off if I need to bring, my kids to the doctor or, offer more flexibility in terms of when I can even schedule appointments for them.
It's not just moms leaving the workforce. Americans are retiring in greater numbers too.
What am I looking at behind you guys right now?
That's our RV. Yeah, that's our RV. You got the background.
Scott and Mary Banks retired early this September at 57 and 59 respectively and are road tripping across the country.
Packed up, strapped down, and ready to head down the road.
Scott quit his finance job. Mary left real estate.
I said, what would you think if we did it now instead of waiting 3 more years?
And I'm like, I pushed all my chips in. I'm all in.
1.5 million Americans were on pace to retire during the pandemic. Instead, that number more than doubled to 3.6 million.
And it was just that thought of, gosh, wouldn't it be just a tragedy if we spent all this time working for our retirement and then right near the finish line, you catch a horrible disease and die and never get to enjoy your retirement.
So they capitalized on the hot housing market, sold their home, and hit the road.
How is life on the road compared to the jobs that you left behind?
Gosh, I wish I could say it was tough, but no, it's great. I do not miss at all working right now.
The Banks clearly enjoying their early retirement there. Now, the industries with the highest quit rates are education, transportation, leisure, and hospitality. These are industries that before the pandemic were suffering from labor shortages. And of course, that's being felt much more acutely right now. And the Americans we spoke to who quit those industries said that they did it to look for higher wages, to look for more flexibility at work, and to be able to work from home so they didn't have to interact with as many people because of COVID fears. But Alex and Christy, clearly this pandemic has transformed the way that Americans are wanting to work and the work that they're willing to do.
So I think I can take my mic here. Okay. So, one of the things that the gentleman said, the guy who was in finance, said something that was really interesting, is that the fact that people somehow question the whole myth about retirement. About that you're going to work until you're 65-ish or 67-ish. You shut it down and then, you get your pension or you get your Social Security. Nobody believed that. And in fact, during the time of COVID, the economy was in such an uproar. It was such a state of chaos. Nobody thought, brothers and sisters, that I'm going to live to be 65. Or even if I get to be 65, it's not going to be the quality of life that I want to have. It's a very interesting thing. You know, I have a very good, let's just say, a good friend who retired early. And in him talking about retiring early, he was essentially saying, look, the longer I stay in the system, the more money I'm going to lose. There's no, I've maxed out where I'm going to be making money. At this point in time, I'm working, but the cost of living is going to catch up to me. And he was also pretty astute, saying, listen, the work that I'm doing for this particular company, if I did it on my own, I could price my own work. While I'm here, I have a job. I can't price my own work. So when you start thinking about some of those things, brothers and sisters, it boils down to something that's not really being talked about enough. It's being talked about, but it's not being talked about enough. And this is the fact that in the history of America, if you will, not since the Great Depression, and I would say even the Great Depression had some upside to it, because you had some people still held on the money. But not since the Great Depression have you had a financial event that was tied to something as crazy as the pandemic, whereby it essentially left scars. All of us have scars. We all have scars. It was not just the idea that COVID was about. It was also the idea that we were traumatized. Traumatized by something we're normally not doing. Uh-oh. Hold on a minute, folks. I have to switch my camera. Sorry, folks. Sorry about that, people. Something went off of my camera. But in any event, I am here and I improvise well. But what I was saying, though, and the point I was getting to, was the fact that the pandemic, for everything it's been, everything it hasn't been, really boiled down to the fact that when it came to economics, I'm talking about how you pay for your bread and your bills and things like that. It was usurped by the fact that we wanted to live. It was really tied into the idea that we weren't going to leave our houses. We were not going to leave our houses. We were not going to expose our loved ones to a pandemic. Of course, we didn't know anything about it when it first came, but we just knew that it killed. And as we come out of this space, people's priorities have been greatly rearranged. The job that you had and the impetus and the amount of personal attachment that you had to the job, after not being there for a year or not seeing some of your co-workers for a year or something like that, or being exposed and engaged in Zoom sessions, but it just didn't make sense. It did not make sense. The idea that we were going to work ourselves to death, for lack of a better word, was usurped by the fact that you didn't have to work yourself to death. You could die before you worked yourself to death. And even in that process, I can speak from personal experience. I'm a comedian. My job is based on people coming out to a spot or people convening. And the way a comedian works is that you have, for lack of a better word, I'm sorry, I need to move my microphone. Sorry about that, Satan. Microphone is good? Okay. So it was really largely based upon the fact that I worried about people. Like the haste to get people back in a space to be at a show. And I questioned some of the comedy clubs and still do, about the rush to get people back in, and there was the idea of getting people back on planes and stuff like that. We're going to socially distance. I recently took a plane, and there's no social distancing, brothers and sisters. You wear your mask. Hear me now. You wear your mask, and you're in a plane with people 3 to 4 to 5 hours, whatever your trip plans, whatever your trip plans are. You're in there 4 to 5 hours, and you have to somehow believe or suspend uh, reason that I won't catch COVID on this plane with these people that I don't know. And the only thing that is protecting me is a mask that's relatively thin. You know, I was at an event for Thanksgiving, and a lot of those people at the event, and I'm very grateful because I took my mom, but a lot of people at the event later on, I guess they hung out more and more and more and more and more. It was a COVID breakout. A lot of people they were turning up, testing positive for COVID, and it's sad, you know, there's good people, but it's indicative of what we were talking about, even going back to last year, when we listened to the experts and the scientists bemoan the fact that people were going to go out and be in these spaces and be in close spaces. You know, I give a shout out to my family last year for Christmas. They really followed the protocol for COVID. They actually had a schedule when people could come pick their gifts up, and they left them under the carport. That's how serious it was. And then you flash not even a year later, and everybody's just up on top of everyone. What does that mean about this whole thing about America ain't working? America got smarter. America got smarter. In the interview, you heard the lady say, if it wasn't for COVID, I'd still be doing our job. Let me tell you something. COVID was a wake-up call, but COVID was a reality check for a lot of people. They weren't living their best lives. They don't know whose lives they were living. They were day-to-day, morning Ralph, morning Sam, people punch the clock in, punch the clock out. They weren't connected with their families. And now you have a space. It's not, and I would even say, brothers, this is not an artificial situation. When you think about it, when you really, really think about it, I was talking to my friend Ben about it, who actually had COVID. Ben said, you know, I worked myself into a tizzy whereby I probably led myself into COVID. He talked about being sick. He talked about being sick. Now, Ben is a fellow Muslim, but listen to what he said, though. Ben said, while I was sick, he said, I woke up in a room and I was so sick. He said, I was in a room that didn't have any angles. He said, I was in a room that didn't have any angles. He said, and not having any angles scared me. He said this was not a normal setting. He realized in this space while he was hallucinating and everything, he said, I realized that this is probably what death feels like. Now, if you take that type of thing and you really bear it out, and he said, you know, he said, I have work to do. He said, but it has nothing to do with a job. I have work to do, but it has nothing to do with a job. That recalibration, brothers and sisters, that we're talking about, people not going to work, people got smarter. Some people are like, I'm going to go ahead and try and get some more money. I'm not mad at you. Some people say, wait a minute, I'm going to go in business for myself. I'm not mad at you. But there are some people who said, wait a minute, I've dedicated an entire lifetime to this business, that if I were to pass away, they just get somebody else. Therein lies a disconnect. That people recognize their own trauma. You know, we are probably, at this point, one of the most culture, health sensitive nations in the world. But at the same time, we're so, I'd say, deluged with everything that people have lost sensibilities. There are people who will put on a mask, and there's some people who will yell out in a crowded building, YOLO, you only live once. And you talk about the lack of balance. When we talk about work, what is work? They have terms, workplace balance, you know, work-life balance and things like that. Now, when they talk about work-life balance, they're talking about the introduction of family, and we have children and paternity leave, but nobody saw COVID coming. If I told you I saw it coming, I'd be lying. In fact, my worst scenario about not being able to work was basically the fact that either I got too old, I wasn't funny, I had a physical issue, or people just didn't like what I was doing. Out of that four, none of them had to do with the fact that everybody had the potential to get sick and die. So when you talk about America ain't working, is it more so that America ain't working, or America is finally taking the time to think? And not America, but Americans. The people who donate their lifeblood and sweat and tears, this thing that we call the great American experience, that's American economy. So not to beat the bushes or anything like that, but I wanted to make sure that we did talk about it. I've said this in private conversations that yes, at a certain point during COVID, I was like, I'm not going to do stand up anymore. It didn't mean as much. To make people laugh was never the same as nurses talking about watching people die and being helpless in that situation. Many of you know, it's chronicled on this show, I lost my big brother, my mentor, Reginald Kitchen, to watch him go through that process where he could not reach out. We couldn't reach out, and we couldn't reach to him because you had all the COVID protocols. This is a deep thing. This is emotional and spiritual scarring that requires the appropriate amount of time to heal. So while we are talking about these things, brothers and sisters, I would lend to this conversation that we do need to stop and take stock of our families and our children and our aunts and our uncles and whatever those relationships that are not working. Those things stress us too, but at least prioritize making those things more important, more accessible. All right? So that's the last part. Now, I'll wrap this up by saying this. I honestly don't believe that the job situation is going to turn around. A majority of people at 55 and 65 said, why wait till I'm 55 and 65? Many of you know you can retire at 55 and get some type of retirement. I mean, I'm 54 and I'm still getting stuff from AARP. But that's the truth. At 55, people think you can retire. The people in that news clip, they weren't over 60. Some people going, wait a minute. At a certain point in time, I'm just working for you. There's no benefit. My 401k doesn't really get any bigger, and retirement doesn't really get any bigger. It doesn't change the number on my Social Security. It's almost like insurance at a certain point in time, because the longer you live on insurance, the less and less your award can be. Actually, with insurance, if you don't die early enough, you really ain't going to have anything at the end. Think about that. So, let me get ready to wrap this up, brothers and sisters. 2 things I want us to think about. Just 2 things. 1, what's your quality of life away from your employment? What's the relationship of your employment with your family? Does it really make you better? Is the money that you're earning really the thing that's sustainable? And I'm talking about not sustainable wages. I'm talking about sustainable understanding, life in your house, in your family, in your community. Is it really what it is supposed to be? Number 2, if it's not that, are you willing to be courageous enough and brave enough to step away from that situation and create a model, create jobs, create opportunities, create work that allow for you and your family to flourish far beyond when you're 55 and 65 years old? That's the thought for today, brothers and sisters. Sorry about the camera. I thought I had this worked out. But it looked good while it was up. Oh, walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, JT. How you doing, beloved? Shouts out. My main man, Carter. Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I know you guys jumped on the call. I appreciate you. I'm just recognizing you now because I just need to get to the bottom of the show. So let's go ahead and wrap up. Let's get to our sponsors. We got a new number for our lead sponsor, www.befinancialindependent.com. Again, that's www.befinancialindependent.com. If you don't want to go to the website, call 202-508-3780. Again, that's 202-508-3780. And if you are actually considering improving yourself, expanding your Islamic knowledge, whether you're Muslim or not, you got to check out Bayan Islamic Graduate School. Again, that's Bayan Islamic Graduate School, located in Claremont, California, 30 miles east of Los Angeles. Brothers and sisters, they have an amazing online program turning out a lot of scholars, a lot of just very learned people about life and living. I can actually credit some of the work I did with Bayan during this whole time of crisis, really kind of getting me through, really having me sit down and micro assess what my life was and what my relationships were. So shout out the band, go to bandonline.org. And of course, our newest sponsor, of whom we just shot a commercial, and we will premiere that commercial as soon as it's off the hopper. We're going to give a shout out to Convenience Urgent Care. Again, that's Convenience Urgent Care. Go to convenienturgent.com. Again, that's convenienturgent.com. Convenient Urgent Care, practically located in Houston, Texas, with locations in Cypress, Pasadena, and Houston on Parker Road. So listen, everybody, you guys have been a great crowd. I appreciate you. Much love. Tell somebody you love them. And if it's somebody you don't like, tell them you don't love them. But at least communicate. Take care of yourself. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Well, team, we've come to the end of yet another show. And I have to say I had a good time, and I hope that you had a good time as well. Listen, at this part of the show, we have no more show. I could literally sing a song saying we have no more show. However, to spare all of us that embarrassment and chaos, I'm just going to say, please join us tomorrow here on the Shout Out Show, Monday through Thursdays, and every first Saturday, we do our Saturday Spotlight. Here we are again, 5 to 5:30 on the Central Time. And of course, we're going to do our rebroadcast at 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock p.m. And of course, that would be 6 o'clock on the West Coast. So time for you to go, because it's time for me to go. I think I will do that song. Thank you for coming to the show. Thank you for coming to the show. That's all the lyrics I wrote. But you get the idea. See you tomorrow. Assalamu alaikum. Shout out.